I'll get to this later, but the structure of these proposals is there's 100 pages of narrative, that's the limit, and then there are 150 pages of other supporting documentation appendices, 250 in total. What's at the website is at 100 pages in some cases. The program features, there's selection criteria which I've enumerated here, and there's points associated with each one. Ruth's going to get back to this and talk about what of these selection criteria we think there may be stuff within NROC that can be useful for you in bolstering your arguments. And you need to think about, as I read the documentation, you guys can correct me along the way here, I was in my room by myself reading this, making this stuff up. But as I read it, it's necessary that you address each of these selection criteria in the proposal, not just the ones that seem really cool, because each of them is relevant and germane to the final decision about the number of points you receive. And then there's the priorities, what the federal government is looking for. And you can see the very first one is the absolute priority, that they are looking for proposals that get to the issue of comprehensive approach to educational reform. That's an absolute given. And then there's a preferred priority. They're looking for STEM. And so there's 15 additional points that are given to the overall proposal if you are doing a STEM topic. It's an all or nothing, by the way. You're either doing STEM or you're not. And then everything else is invitational, which means I guess it can play a role. Is that how you read that? But there's some of these that may work better than others for the proposal. And this, I'm going to put this, we're going to put this presentation up so they can get it, presumably. So we'll put this up. You don't have to write this down if you don't want to. Plus a lot of, this is all the website. I'm just parroting what I've already read. Again, for those of you who write proposals like me and Susan and others in the room, it's 100 pages, it's 150 pages of appendices, 250, which seems like plenty, but no hyperlinks are allowed in this, none. And for me, who live and die by hyperlinks when I write a proposal, it's a bad thing. And so,
Why would that be? What is that? What does that mean? Is they just
arcane?
It's the capabilities of those, some people just can't handle it.
my presumption, what one is led to believe is since it's printed more often than not, and people can't get to the hyperlinks. And so, no hyperlinks. So when you're thinking your strategy to write this, keep that in mind, because it changed my strategy phenomenally in doing this. And here's the part that really comes back to our efforts to have these funds move towards open educational resources. Near the end of the RFP, in section 14, other requirements, it says making work available. And there's the quote. Freely available is what it says. It doesn't say what we'd like it to say, but it says freely available, and that will work. It works fine for what we represent ourselves to be at NROC. And so having NROC as a resource in your proposal will work for this. Because it does say it must be freely available to others, including but not limited to, by posting the work on a website identified or sponsored by the department. Now, that's not a good idea. That's a requirement. It's in the requirement section of this. You have to have that. Has to happen if you're going to spend the money and build stuff. Is that how you see it too?
There's a big debate among this broader OER community of the Creative Commons people and the MIT people and not liking the phrase freely available, because some people take that as, I'll give you an example, SAS Curriculum Pathways is copyrighted and locked and you can't modify it, but it's free. And so the thing that really makes open is the
changeable.
The licensing tool, the legal tool of open license and sharing and modifying. So just keep that in mind. That may come up, and those nuances, if you need help when you're having those conversations, get tricky, because you can make something available on your website, but it can be locked into your system and not really made available. So that's a tricky phrase. But the concept they were trying to get to and the language that they're continuing to use at the federal level is freely available. And what they mean is open, but how that will get interpreted and used is a question that's more information than anybody needs on that, but I think it's helpful to have it.
Yeah, I think the takeaway here is that it's a requirement that you address this in the proposal. It's a requirement. And it's so far buried at the end of the RFP, it's possible people are going to skip right over that, but you need to bring it up because it's going to be an issue.